has now come into fruition. So the next steps here, as I mentioned, is coming out with a resource estimate that we should be still on track to develop by the end of this year, and that's going to be informed by the multiple holes that are left to be released over the next 2-3 months to initiate our metallurgical testing for the gold zone, high-grade gold zone, which we believe strongly recovers out very well.
Hello and welcome back to the Assay TV, where today I'm happy to be joined once again by Sam Lee, who is the President and CEO of NorthIsle Copper and Gold. NorthIsle is a Vancouver-based company whose mission is to become a leading sustainable mineral resource company for the future. The company owns the North Island project, which is a significant copper and gold porphyry deposit in Canada. And NorthIsle has recently completed an updated PEA for its 100% owned North Island project and is currently advancing towards a PFS. Okay, so welcome, Sam. Great to have you on the Assay once again. It's been a little while since we last caught up.
Indeed, Katie, it's great to see you again. Thanks for having me.
So as we know, NorthIsle's North Island project is one of the most promising copper and gold porphyry deposits in Canada. Can you just give us a brief overview of the project for those that aren't so familiar?
Sure thing. So, as you mentioned, it's a copper gold porphyry in Canada. What we have today is a very attractive economic project, approximately $1 billion NPV at $3.25 copper and 1650 gold. That's approximately informed by 2.4 billion pounds of copper in the indicated category and about 4 million ounces of gold in the indicated category, with an IRR after tax of about 19%. So in all respects, a very, very significant project. There's incredible access infrastructure. It's about 20 kilometers away from the nearest port. Existing roads, paved roads, go right into the property. Less than 50 kilometers away from BC Hydro connection. There's a 99 megawatt wind farm just to the north of our property. And there's abundance of fresh water, about 2.9 meters of rainfall a year. Which in this world is one of the most important commodities, and we have a plethora of it. So that's what is underpinning our valuation today. But having said that, we are now very rapidly progressing a satellite project that's just to the north, about 3 kilometers away, called the Northwest Expo, which is our high return opportunity. Significantly higher grades. We're seeing 4 to 5 times higher gold grades within the copper porphyry. And approximately 2 to 3 times higher gold grades than we would expect to see in a porphyry globally. And then, of course, the third proposition, is our longer-term optionality as it relates to Pemberton Hills, which is a giant porphyry potential, 6.5 by kilometer, 1.5 kilometer lithocap, approximately 7 kilometers away from our main project and about 7 kilometers away from BHP's historical Island Copper project. There's about $4.5 million been spent to date with ourselves in Freeport, 14 targets defined, and we're fully permitted and currently drilling on it today. So if you think about the proposition, there's essentially 3 companies stuck into one. If we were to spin out all 3 of these projects, they would independently be very significant projects and companies in their own right. But this is really an option or a menu of options that shareholders and stakeholders are attached to, all in one company, NorthIsle Copper and Gold.
Excellent, thank you for that. Let's just look back. You just mentioned Northwest Expo. Let's look at that in a little bit more depth. You just had some results from your 2023 drill program. What were some of those high-grade results? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is really significant because, again, this is only 3 kilometers away from our main project, but it is quite separated by the fact that it is a high-grade gold zone within the porphyry. So we hit intersects of approximately 130 meters, grading about 1.65 grams per ton gold and 0.33% copper, which is about 2.13 grams per ton gold equivalent over that 130 meters. So if you think about it, that's grades times thickness interval is over 278, which is extraordinary by any measures, especially when you're in a copper porphyry system, especially when you're this close to surface. We essentially hit that hole approximately 65 meters away from surface. The surface is inclined, drill is going on an angle, so the drill result actually hit closer to about 200 meters. But given that the angle it is to the surface, we're only approximately 65 meters away from surface. So this is very, very near surface, high grade. Within this intercept, what was very, very interesting was a quartz stockwork feldstar porphyry system that we typically actually don't see across the porphyry. And within this 15 meter interval, we saw grades of approximately 5 grams per ton gold equivalent, which in a copper equivalent is approximately 3.71 grams per ton, so 3.71% copper. So again, these are extraordinary mineralization grades within a very large copper porphyry system. So the significance of obviously this is, we believe, and we've set out to determine a zone, an envelope of approximately 500 meters in strike by about 460 down dip, and approximately 80 to 100 meters of intervals that we're seeing. Of these historical grades we're seeing 1 to 1.2 grams per ton gold with initial 0.2% copper. So these are holes that we've drilled historically in the past through many years with the objective of developing a resource by the end of this year, fully financed within that envelope. Obviously, the grades that we just saw, we just released last week, are exceptionally higher than that. And again, close to surface. So this is something that we are currently endeavoring to figure out, obviously, where this zone goes, because we believe at this point it is open in multiple directions. And obviously, because it's so close to surface, it's certainly worth understanding and chasing to seeing whether we can expand this envelope beyond the 500 meter strike, 460 meter down dip. So that's something we're currently doing. We still have over 10 holes left to report within this area. That's inclusive of holes that have been drilled and haven't been assayed, and holes that are coming from assay labs. That's going to encapsulate our full program to get to a resource at Northwest Expo, plus some drilling to the east of that within an area we call Goodspeed, only 2 kilometers away, where we are obviously seeing some pretty significant and very interesting alteration. So lots of results coming out within this area, and we're ready to show the markets what the implications of those results are within the next 2-3 months.
Excellent. You've just mentioned the market, so I have to ask, NorthIsle is currently trading at it's quite a discount relative to its peer group. This is obviously based on an updated PEA for North Island project. Can you just tell us why that's a bit more of an opportunity?
Sure. It's a tough question, but it's a very good one, because where people obviously see discounts, we, our shareholder group comprising of 4 individuals, Michael Gentili, Dale Corman, our chairman, Will Matthews, and Donald K. Johnson with Plus Management, we all see this as the opportunity, right? And so how do you make that bridge to something that's fair value, for which, right now we're trading at probably only about a 20% discount to what we believe is fair value? Well, the opportunity is this. There is a belief that you cannot permit projects on Vancouver Island, which is where we are. We are on the northern end of Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island is bifurcated into the industrial part, which is the northern end, which has historically been mining, fishing, logging for hundreds of years, and the southern end, which is what everyone associates Vancouver Island with. But in the end, we're all part of BC, which all runs through the same permitting process. And what we've done is we've attached a very significant agreement with our First Nation partners, which we struck in December of last year, which enabled us to get their consent before even going through the permitting process in British Columbia. So that has resulted in is us getting our 5-year, multi-year access-based permits from British Columbia within 14 weeks, a time period that usually takes most companies a year to 2 years in British Columbia to receive. So I believe this is very strong evidence that the perception around permitting on Vancouver Island is completely false. If you have strong partnerships, if you have a consent-based approach, which is what we have, then you can actually permit projects in a faster period of time, because this is a critical metals project, because this is an imperative for Canada, for British Columbia, and for the world in order to electrify, decarbonize. If you have that political will, coupled with consent and community belief that this project should go ahead, then you will get your permits faster. So I believe we've proven that out reasonably successfully over the last 6 to 12 months. The second thing is that right now, currently, we're trading at only about 6% or 0.06 times our net asset value, just based on that one project, that PEA that I just described, right? So the results that just came out and caused us to, obviously increase our share price by about 30%, hasn't even been factored into that equation today. So this idea of having two other projects right now, that one represents a very near surface, high grade, almost a starter pit zone that you can conceivably see comes into production, 10, 12 years of production that bridges into the much larger 22-year proposition that we've defined through the PEA. Well, that is very interesting to not only shareholders, stakeholders, but also industry participants, especially gold companies that are desperately seeking copper exposure. This is no longer an apologetic belief that they are looking for copper. It is absolutely a fact that this is an evolution that is continuing to happen. So for a project like ours, which is a copper porphyry with this really high grade, attractive gold zone, I think that just makes us relevant on so many levels. And then thirdly, of course, the third proposition of being sort of the long dated, huge option value in Pemberton Hills, we've sized this up around a 6.5 kilometer alteration by 5 kilometer alteration. This is kind of the same size, the system at least, of a Las Palambras or a Batahiju. So this is clearly a very, very big company proposition for which we are not today. But that is when we will introduce or the reason why we will look to introduce partners for that one project alone. So, if you think of the equivalent to that opportunity being a philo, pre-discovery, if you think of, excuse me, the NorthIsle project today, as is defined as being like a Mount Milligan or a Red Chris, and then of course the high grade Northwest Expo, you could pick and choose Tocantinzinho in Brazil, coffee in Yukon, Magino in Ontario. That's the size and scale that we believe we can develop that proposition. So all those three in one, currently trading only about 4% of our net asset value on just the one.
Excellent. And as you've just said, copper, it's crucial to the energy transition. Obviously, we're not psychic, but what is the demand forecast and investment requirements, you think, for copper in the coming years?
Yeah,
as it's so vital for this decarbonisation.
Sure. I think that your viewership must be inundated with this narrative that, quite frankly, we've identified many, many years ago, which is copper is king. In order to electrify, you cannot do it without copper. And we actually do have a problem on executing the action plan on building out the infrastructure to be able to electrify and decarbonize at the rate that we're hoping to. We're already seeing governments already backtracking on their goals of transitioning to electric cars. And that's all because we just don't have the material or the infrastructure today to actually have a conceivable plan to execute by 2030, 2035. And the issue also is, certainly the disconnect we're seeing copper companies and the copper opportunity in general, at least development companies, it is being massive disconnect because it's a reasonably long dated proposition, which, will have flaws around execution. And so that's why it's always very challenging to invest directly into a copper development story, because it's such a large proposition for a reasonably long dated mine. That is exactly why we think Northwest Expo is a critical piece to our investment proposition, because it is conceptually, potentially, this high grade zone that, again, can be compared to a coffee or a Tocantinzinho or a Magino in size and capital intensity, which is significantly less than what we're considering as part of our larger copper porphyry project, that can bridge nicely into that much larger 22-year project that we've defined, right? So if you can consider or be able to contemplate that a 10 to 15-year starter pit gold project that bridges from a cash flow perspective into a 22-year project, copper porphyry project that everyone is looking to get their hands on, that really does match up what the world needs today, which are good projects that can be sanctioned in good jurisdictions. Gold is one of the strongest currencies out there. Cash flowing projects that then could be bridged into what the world needs in 5 to 10 years time, which clearly is an insatiable and probably unrealistic level of demand for the level of supply that's coming on the copper side.
Absolutely. I think just to round things up, Sam, can you just tell us some milestones that investors could look out for in the coming months?
Yeah, sure. And I like to kind of highlight this, this is the catalyst slide or catalyst discussion that we continue to discuss over the course of our many conferences and one-on-ones over the last 6 to 12 months. I do want to highlight that we are executing, right? So we have now fully drilled out the Northwest Expo gold rich zone. Obviously, we're waiting for over 10 holes to come out on the Northwestern Goodspeed zone, but we've executed on that. We obviously have identified the golden rich zone beyond anyone's success, certainly with this last drill hole that we've released that shows these incredible grades of 5 grams per ton over 15 meters. And 3% copper. We are advancing Pemberton Hills, so obviously within a very judicious and systematic way of continuing to move that massive project forward. We are doing it within our means. We have defined targets around the exploration potential at Northwest Expo and Pemberton Hills, which obviously has now come into fruition. So the next steps here, as I mentioned, is coming out with a resource estimate that we should be still on track to develop by the end of this year. And that's going to be informed by the multiple holes that are left to be released over the next 2-3 months to initiate our metallurgical testing for the gold zone, high grade gold zone, which we believe strongly recovers out very well. And then, of course, to ensure that in 2024, we have a very strong direction on how expandable this area on Northwest Expo is to obviously get it to the 100+ million tons that seems to be the critical mass size for a reasonable starter pit to occur. So lots of news to come over the next 6 to 12 months, and we're really excited to be delivering on all of our stated goals over the last 12 months.
Well, it certainly sounds like an exciting time coming up for NorthIsle, and thank you so much for catching up with us again. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Very welcome, Katie. Pleasure to speak with you as always.